the soundtrack to a Friday night in Paris have become the murderous gunfire of 7 heavily armed tanks.
লাল গোলাপের শহর এক রাতের সন্ত্রাসে ভরে গেল সাদা গোলাপে। Cry humanity, cry. If we may not dare to cry freedom, cry humanity, cry. Paris, the city of poetry, painting, freedom, and white roses, is mourning for its dearest ones lost in terror strike. It is life. How the humanity was struck, killed in Paris. It is life. ভিড়ে ঠাসা 6টি জায়গায় 8 আত্মঘাতী আইএস জঙ্গির 40 মিনিটের অপারেশন। 70 American citizens have been killed, and it is war again. It is war again. Humanity is dragged into Bermuda Triangle, and where India, it is a red alarm for us, we Indians, that India plays the most proactive role replacing United Kingdom, which was US partner in Gulf War I, Gulf War II, and strike against Afghanistan. British Parliament refused the mandate to join the US forces, and Cameroon has been deactivated, and Brinchi Baba, Titanic Baba, FDI Baba has taken over the role of United Kingdom because he needs not any mandate whatsoever. He cares not any mandate whatsoever, as the governance of fascism never cares about the nation, the national opinion, the national conscience. Parliament has nothing to do, and India has become the partner of war against Islamic State, which is to be turned into the war against Islam. It is Islamophobia once again. And you are seeing Paris in mourning mode, and রক্তের সমুদ্রে ভাসছে, চোখে ভাসছে ভালোবাসার মানুষ। It is the mood, and it is published in Bengali Dainik. এই সময় স্পেশাল পেজ রক্তাক্ত প্যারিস। লাশের পাহাড়ে শুয়ে মনে হচ্ছিল কখন আমার জন্য বরাদ্দ বুলেটটা ছুটে আসবে। It is war again. It is a Bermuda Triangle which drags in humanity. Cry humanity, cry humanity. If we may dare not cry freedom. সন্ত্রাসবাদী হানার পর দ্বিতীয় ভোর দেখলো প্যারিস, কিন্তু দুঃস্বপ্ন তারা করেই যাচ্ছে। দিনের আলো ফুটলেও রাতের অন্ধকার তাই কিছুতেই কাটছে না। It is darkness It is darkness all over.
It's an act of war
The poetry
committed by a terrorist army, ISIS.
has become the mourning in Paris, the city of Voltaire, the city of Victor Hugo, the city of Les Miserables, the city of French Revolution's age in mourning, more tears, flow tears, mothers are weeping, wives are weeping, and the children are helpless again. And it is a debate on Paris attacks, and we have to see that also. And the debate continued, and Paris is mourning in mourning mood. The city of Voltaire is weeping. The man who never said yes, who resisted the ruling hegemony across the border. The man who was sentenced to capital punishment but never surrendered his conscience. He is Voltaire.
Another terrorist attack claimed
And it is the city of Voltaire which is mourning. Paris in again bleeding mood. The Eiffel Tower is spared, but Parisians are injured. They have opened all the doors. They have opened the taxis have downed their meters, and every victim is welcome in any home in Paris. We never have witnessed this in India, even during the Mumbai blast, which echoed in the Paris attack. All paintings are full of blood, and every white rose is killed as every red rose is killed. শহরটা কাজে নেমে পড়ে খুব তাড়াতাড়ি, সাত সকালেই জমজমাট। ব্ল্যাক ফ্রাইডের সেই রাতের পর শনিবার আর সেই ছবি দেখা যায়নি। রাস্তাঘাট ফাঁকা, দোকানপাট বন্ধ, গাড়ি চলছে হাতে গোনা। রবিবারে একই ছবি।
The ISIL terrorist group has claimed responsibility for the deadly gun and bomb attacks across Paris. The terrorist group says
বেলা বাড়তে দৃশ্যটা বদলালো কিছু, কিন্তু তাতে প্রশ্ন নেই যেন জোর করে ঘর থেকে বার করা হয়েছে। It is agency's report and contributed by the reporters team. Eiffel Tower বন্ধ। Eiffel Tower is closed. Louvre Museum closed. Tourists are denied entry in the iconic spots, and it is a different Paris. Every vehicle is searched, strictest security in airport, in stations, in tubes. It is more than enough. The security is stricter than it was in Mumbai after blast, and the pledge is much more consolidated.
and voiced
as Barack Obama
terrorism.
declared last day, and just after the terror strike addressing the nation, we had earlier shared the clipping of Barack Obama press conference. Now, I want to
Arab allies generously contributed to the creation of terrorist groups with the objective.
I want to show you some clippings from the documentary on my favorite poet Voltaire. It is a Voltaire biography documentary. It is very important to understand the phenomenon what French is about. It is about Voltaire the poet.
This is the chateau of Ferney, near the border between France and Switzerland, and close to Geneva. It's the place where Voltaire spent the last 20 years of his long life. It was the centre of a large estate, and being Voltaire, it was not just a place to live, but the opportunity to put into practice many of his ideas about how people should live together. Voltaire set up a number of businesses so that the people round about could have work. Watchmaking was particularly successful, and the manufacture of silk stockings. He experimented with new farming methods. He even rebuilt the church and dedicated it not to a saint, as was the usual practice, but to God. As a result, the people of Ferney don't forget him.
Voltaire had been associated with the agrarian communities. Here you are. We are uprooted from agrarian India, rural India,
In the form of
and the musicality is
his
lost.
own very distinctive style. He received a constant stream of visitors from all around the world, and he carried on a vast correspondence with a large number of very interesting people. His long life spanned the years of the 18th century, which we generally refer to as the Enlightenment, and he himself did quite a lot to enlighten the world and to turn over...
We are deprived of enlightenment. We are deprived of knowledge, and it is knowledge economy
His collected
which is
work
killing us.
over 40 volumes. His correspondence quite as many. As a writer, it is important to distinguish him from most others. He was also a man of action. He could not just write about it.
The creativism is
Practical,
activism all around. It is the activism of creativity. It is the aesthetics of social realism.
and intellectual to the highest degree. Most unusually of all, he had a great sense of humour, with which he entertained his world and still entertains ours today. When Voltaire was born in Paris in 1694, the son of a successful lawyer,
It is 18th century France,
included
Paris.
a number of noblemen, and so courtiers of the great King Louis XIV, the Sun King as he was called, because everything in France turned around him. Louis XIV was undoubtedly one of the most remarkable men ever to rule either in France or anywhere else. He was an intelligent and gifted dictator, and just what France needed at the time he became monarch. When he began, the country was ruled by a babble of gifted but self-serving nobles, who were Renaissance princes and conscious of their individuality, but who had no idea of the nation-state and what their responsibilities.
No idea about the nation state, no
In England,
done.
in the 17th century, when they had problems with the government and the king would not do what they wanted, they cut off the king's head and established the primacy of the bourgeois parliament. Of course, in England, they then brought the king's son back in the form of Charles II, but with greatly reduced powers. Never again was England to be ruled by a despotic king. Parliament had the power. In France, however, they had Louis XIV. When he was finished, certainly the nobles were severely curbed, and power was slipping away to the new merchants and bourgeoisie. But the patterns of rule he had laid down were to wither for another 65 years or so before the French Revolution, when, like the English, the king was deposed and finally executed for misusing his power.
How the changes came in
At the
France.
palace of Versailles, at the time of Voltaire's birth, all the power was gathered into Louis's hands. Courtiers who wanted anything
It was a hegemony ruling in France,
art of hiding their truth
ruling Paris.
and always be ready with the right words of flattery. The people they had to flatter were most often the line of women who came to be the king's.
We see the flattering in India, the
It was all a question
saffron tsunami.
and money. Talent might get you noticed, but you could as quickly rise as fall if you did not have the right backers. The gardens of Versailles underline one simple thing, however: form and order. Louis gave this to the French, you might say. Things had to be done the right way. Order was everything. This was a huge change from the disorder of previous reigns, and it set the stage for the enlightenment in thought and style which was to characterize Voltaire.
As a student, he looks so handsome.
Voltaire was not slow to realize that favour at the court was the only way to advancement, and when people discovered what wit and charm the young man had, he was at first eagerly sought out. But of course what he wanted was to be accepted on his merits as a writer, and he was not slow to present his wares. The king's death intervened. In 1715, Voltaire was 21. Louis XIV died and was succeeded by a young man, Louis XV, too young to rule. A regent, the Duc d'Orléans, took the reins, and everyone thought they were at last free from the tyranny of Louis, including Voltaire, who was not slow to pen some scurrilous stuff about Louis's regime. It was too much for the Duke, and Voltaire suddenly found himself in the notorious prison, the Bastille.
Bastille, it was broken,
On the wall.
and Voltaire landed in Bastille.
Good food and lots of company.
We have the details of the Bastille in Les Miserables, and the story is all about the
He
Bastille.
wrote a play called Oedip, based on the Greek tragedy about the incest of Oedipus. He owed a lot to Racine, certainly.
Voltaire mocked the establishment.
To revile
It was satire,
past regime.
hating the hegemony.
The public loved it and flocked to the theatre.
The
And
public
the government hated it.
loved it and flocked the theatre, and it was the crime of Voltaire.
The Duc de Sully. He thought he was safe there until some of his enemies in the government arranged for him to be beaten up and sent to the Bastille again. They let him out again a few days later, but for a witty and outspoken man, France was no longer safe. He went to England. He already had a good English friend in Lord Bolingbroke, who had married a French woman and lived for a time in France. Bolingbroke had much influence, and Voltaire was well received. He met the literati, Congreve, a successful writer of comedies. He met Alexander Pope, a witty poet who didn't trust Voltaire for some reason. He met the Irish Dean of St. Patrick's, Swift, who had written Gulliver's Travels, a wonderful satire on human morals, which Voltaire admired immensely.
It had been always universal brotherhood. It had been always global.
Burke and Bishop Berkeley, philosophers of the Enlightenment, who were influencing the minds of Englishmen everywhere. He was astonished that
I am sharing this video just because it is very relevant to the recent revolt by Indian artists, writers, filmmakers, sociologists, historians, and as well economists to understand the phenomenon of human conscience, which was represented better by Voltaire. And Paris is the city of Voltaire.
Learned English well and found himself in much agreement with the ways of English society. Many of his reflections he wrote about in what were published as Lettres philosophiques, sometimes called Letters from England.
He wrote about 2,000 letters.
Found he had inherited some money from his father. Always aware of the power money confers, he invested it and spent much energy for the rest of his life nurturing his investments until he was a very rich man. Of course, he wrote more plays. Brutus was one, and the next was Zaire, both tragedies in the classic French form, which preserve the three unities of space, time, and place, something which, in spite of his experience of the free
unity of space, time, and place, it is all about creativity.
He wrote a successful history of the reign of Charles XII, but again, he went too far. Adrienne Lecouvreur was a famous actress he knew well and admired. However, when she died in 1731, the church refused her burial in consecrated ground because of her dubious profession. For Voltaire, this was utter humbug, coming from people who had so much admired her work when she was alive. He wrote a bitter and much publicized attack on their treachery to her. He was so popular with the public that the authorities held their hand for a time. With the publication of his Lettres philosophiques, he finished himself. His views on the English Parliament, the Church, the theatre, they all clashed with the received views of the court, and he had to...
His views on the hegemony, on church and theatre clashed the interests of the hegemony.
Were burned by the hangman in June 1734. Well, better the books than the writer was undoubtedly Voltaire's view. Falling in love was something Voltaire did quite often, but most significantly with the Marquise de Châtelet. He was 39 and she was 24 when they met. finally moved to her chateau at Cirey-sur-Blaise, close to the border with Lorraine and sufficiently far from Paris and its dangerous and suspicious police forces. It was quite acceptable for such a liaison, as of course she had married her Marquis for money and status, and the Marquis was quite flattered that she'd taken up with so notable a man. He visited them at Cirey and apparently got on well enough with Voltaire. Voltaire was attracted to the Marquise as a woman, of course. She was generally not reckoned beautiful by her woman friends, but maybe they were jealous. But she was a lot more than that. In her field of mathematics and science, she was the equal of many eminent men. Apparently she liked books, diamonds, algebra, petticoats, and physics, and in her insatiable curiosity about everything, she matched Voltaire. Her conversational powers and intelligence meant that while they worked independently by day at their various intellectual labours, their evenings were spent in convivial conversation and mutual respect. It suited both of them down to the ground. Voltaire built this wing onto the chateau for his own use and generally improved the place. He had the money, so he put it to good use. The Marquis was grateful. Up in the huge attics, he built a little theatre, and as was his usual practice, when a new play was
He
read,
was associated with French theatre very closely
forcing everyone to learn their lines and directing them
and associated with the nature
in Paris.
itself.
It was a stable and fruitful period of his life. He stayed for almost 20 years, until the Marquise became pregnant by another man. She was, of course, old for such an event and died in childbirth. He did not mind her infidelity. After all, he was an old man by this time, but he was devastated by her loss. It was the end of a truly romantic and fruitful relationship. For many years, Frederick II, King of Prussia, known as the Great, had been an admirer of Voltaire. He was an unusual king for his time, the nearest thing to a liberal despot, if that is possible. Of course, he had absolute powers, as did most of his fellow monarchs at the time, except the kings of England.
It is not only the history of France, it is the history of Europe, the history of England, the history of Germany, which created
He
Voltaire.
stopped executing people altogether, a quite astonishing move for any king to make. He began erecting public buildings and improving roads to make things work more effectively. He introduced schemes of education for the common people. He developed manufacturing.
It is the Europe of 18th century.
And in fact did a great deal to improve the lives of his people, and as a result, the prosperity of this small state. He also developed a first-class, well-disciplined army, already well established by his father. For many, it was a privilege to serve in Frederick's army. All this resulted in his becoming a great deal more powerful and influential than he would otherwise have been. Much of what he did that was liberal and enlightened emanated from the ideas of Voltaire. It was no surprise when, after the death of Madame de Châtelet, Voltaire decided to move to live in Frederick's enlightened capital of Potsdam. Voltaire was, of course, open to flattery, like many others.
Voltaire
King's invitation
shifted to
was quite
Prussia.
hard to refuse. He was under no illusions about Frederick, however. He was still an absolute monarch, and as such, not to be relied on. Still, Frederick did try. He was musical and played the flute reasonably well. He tried to get Voltaire to teach him to write poetry in French, in which he was fluent. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, of course, even if the sow happens to be a well-endowed king. So Frederick's literary progress stalled. Then there was the question of women. Women had always figured largely in Voltaire's life, but at Frederick's court, although he was officially married, they hardly existed. However, for a while, Voltaire, the most eminent ornament of the court, felt reasonably satisfied. Frederick was not backward when it came to spending money. He built this summer palace for himself first, sans souci, without care. There were figs and grapes under careful cultivation on the terraces. The splendid gardens were full of echoes of the order of classical Greece, much in fact for Voltaire to admire. Entertaining his guests to tea was easy when you had a tea house like this. From a design by Frederick himself, the tea house unsurpassingly captures the Oriental taste, which was the order of the day in mid-18th century Europe. But as kings do, Frederick, once he'd achieved his goal of capturing Voltaire, got a bit tired of it, as Voltaire did of King. Two events drove them apart. A scientist called Maupertuis, well known in Europe, had been the leading light in Berlin before Voltaire came. Maupertuis had some mad schemes about founding the perfect society in the bowels of the earth. Voltaire could not resist writing a comic poem about this. Called Diatribe of Dr. Akakia, it made merciless fun of Maupertuis, Frederick's favourite scientist. Voltaire himself read it to Frederick, who laughed his head off, but of course forbade publication. Voltaire agreed, but naturally he could hardly bury his funniest lines, so somehow the work got around, and Frederick was suitably furious. Then the businessman Voltaire, unable to miss a good financial deal when he saw one, secretly speculated against the king's currency using inside information and connections, and was found out. Well, the king was even more mad this time, and Voltaire, a bit rueful at being discovered. So he left. Kings, no matter how clever, were not to be relied on. His next stop was Geneva, and in 1754, at the age of 60, he bought a house overlooking the city, which he renamed Lady.
Well, I think it is enough to understand the phenomenon Voltaire and the 18th century England, France, Germany, and the Europe. I have to go first, and I am
Calvinist priesthood. He wrote things about Calvin in the local paper. It was all happening again, so he began to look around for somewhere he could begin.
It is the Bermuda Triangle in which the humanity dragged in. I am using the official trailer only because I cannot afford to share the full movie. Please see the full movie on YouTube. It is the Bermuda Triangle, and the humanity is dragged into the Bermuda Triangle. It is war again, and India is proactive. Just look.
I studied the ocean all my life. I've been in some rough situations, storms, fogs, even a few hurricanes. to make of it. I felt as if something playing with us.
That boat disappeared 100 years ago.
Respect its secrets. Don't provoke its wrath.
It is Bermuda Triangle once again.
Legend has it that the triangle covers the seas between Miami, the island of Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, an area of 1.5 million square miles. Since 1492, when Columbus first sailed into the area and saw strange lights in the sky, the list of unexplainable disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle has grown. Thousands of ships and planes have simply vanished. No warning, no distress calls, no wreckage. The myth of the Bermuda Triangle began on the 5th of December 1945, when a group of 5 aircraft mysteriously disappeared. Flight 19 was a routine training mission of 5 Avenger torpedo bombers. The 3-seater Avenger was the US Navy's top ship and submarine killer. It could carry up to 2,000 pounds of ordnance and had a range of 1,000 miles. The Avenger was robust and reliable. Doomed Flight 19 left Fort Lauderdale at 2:10 on a clear winter's afternoon. 4 hours after they took off, they vanished into thin air.
it is the time of Chhath Puja. It is the general scenario in all over North India. It is Chhath Puja, the Vedic ritual to worship the sun god, and it is without the puja is performed without any purohit, as the worship of Gadiya Baba the worship of Gadiya Baba is performed in Tripura by tribals and non-tribals. It is not Vedic because our Vedic people who worship the powers of the nature, the sun, the water, the air, and everything associated with nature. And now, as we have come to know about the genetics of ancient India, which was similar with intermingling of races, as Tagore explained it as the merger of so many streams of humanities. It is tracing that tradition. The people in North Maya, or North India specifically, those who speak Bhojpuri, they worship Chhath Maya, the female personification of God, sun god. And in ancient India, sun was the most prominent god, and we have the Konark temple in Odisha. Well, it is the scenario as it has been published in जनसत्ता. सूर्य उपासना का 4 दिवसीय महापर्व छठ रविवार को नहाए खाए के साथ शुरू हो गया। इस दिन व्रतियों गंगा स्नान के बाद भोजन में लौकी भात ग्रहण कर विधिवत भगवान सूर्य की आराधना की। सोमवार को खरना और मंगलवार को पहला अर्घ व बुधवार को दूसरे अर्घ के साथ इस लोक पर्व, इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, it is not Vedic ritual, it is not Brahminical, it is a lok parv rooted in folk, rooted in tradition, continued from the days of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, continued to the age from the demise of Buddhist India, when we had the similar DNA all over India, and it was one India, one blood, and we have to revive that India. Now it is FDI all over, and FDI relaxed in 15 sectors had been just a trailer. The reforms film is a longer one, and Economic Times published this lead story. Get ready for another round of reforms. The foreign direct investment, FDI policy liberalization and power reforms package announced before Diwali were just the beginning of a series of executive actions to perk up investment sentiment and give the economy a push. Among measures on the cards are single window clearances of multi-story buildings, a monetary policy framework, a new bankruptcy law, and subsidy reforms as the Modi government seeks to maintain the momentum on policy change. The daily liberalization was not one-off measure, said a government official. Work is on many areas. The Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion has already followed up on FDI changes announced last week with another key proposal aimed at simplification of overall framework entailing industrial sectors. It is says charged on service tax, on traveling, on mobile and landline phone calls, etc. And India is at war. Though it is not a Indo-Pak war again, but the ruling hegemony is planning to play a Global Kargil, and Islamic State has provided this opportunity, striking Paris. And United Kingdom rejected mandate to Cameroon to include himself in the striking force against the Middle East and Arab on name of humanity, and rather yet another startup of oil war. But our Brinchi Baba, our Titanic Baba, our FDI Baba, our ultimate genie is more proactive. He does not care mandate. He bypasses the mandate. He opened all 15 sectors just after a day of the Bihar mandate. Bihar ma Nitish Kumar. It was a Diwali gift. The reforms were declared before Diwali, and the government has to face the winter session of parliament, and it is talking reconciliation on the one hand, and other unplug the Tipu Sultan controversy in Karnataka, riding the Lingayat wave of Baseshwar Baba. The Lingayat movement is Hinduized as the Matua movement is Hinduized, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is captured, and Brinchi Baba opened the B.R. Ambedkar Memorial in London, and he was echoing US President Barack Obama to call the humanity to stand against terror. And mind you, we had the Global Blast. Coincidentally, it was not a massacre of US citizens as it happened in Paris, and United States of America did not respond, and since then United States of America has been detached and could not help India to bring the perpetrators of the terrorist strike to justice, and United States of America failed to help India to fight terror, to fight against terrorism. But India is a partner in the war against terrorism led by United States of America and Israel, and our leader, our political leadership is not bound by parliamentary consensus or parliamentary endorsement, and the cabinet decisions and the executive orders are not subjected to Indian parliament, Indian democracy and Indian people, and it has not to be endorsed. He have not to seek the mandate as Cameroon had to seek the mandate of British Parliament. Hence, Modi declared the war against terror, and it would make
Your Excellency, President Xi Jinping,
just look at the news break by NDTV.
President Jacob Zuma,
Just hear what he is speaking.
I thank our host, President Putin, for excellent arrangements for today's meeting and for his leadership of BRICS. Congratulations for hosting a very successful 7th BRICS Summit. Excellencies, we stand united in strongly condemning the dreadful acts of terrorism in Paris. We express our deepest sympathy and support to Russia for the loss of life in Sinai. Ankara and Beirut are also reminders for terror's growing spread and impact. The entire humanity must stand together as one against terrorism. The need for a united global effort to combat terrorism had never been more urgent. This must also be a priority for BRICS.
India needs a war. Not India, it is the ruling hegemony, because it is discredited and it has to be discredited. And UP Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav has called for grand alliance on the line of Bihar as Lalu and Nitish align to defeat the saffron tsunami. Akhilesh Yadav has called for grand alliance and welcome Mayawati. Come Mayawati, lead India. It is a historical opportunity. You can lead India and it would be the grand alliance. And this saffron tsunami has been discredited, and it has to be discredited in Uttarakhand, UP and Bengal, and in the following elections in states. And thus the RSS needs a war, a global war, to invoke blind nationalism, to invoke Islamophobia yet again, as the Arabian Spring of Big Bang has failed to invoke that blind nationalism. They are using the crusade against Tipu, and it is also failing. They badly need a war, and they can also bargain with the Pakistani military regime, let us see. And now it is an opportunity to play and to display the India's military might in yet another war, because India was not an active partner during the Gulf War first and Gulf War second. Okay. It is very, very serious thing, and Paris mourns, and it is Chhath Maiya ki jai. It is Chhath time. Come Mayawati, humanity dragged into Bermuda Triangle. It is war again, and India is proactive. Grand alliance possible for Uttar Pradesh Paul, says Akhilesh Yadav. Come Mayawati, respond to make history, lead India. War declared yet again, and India takes over United Kingdom. Birinchi Baba, FDI Baba replaced Blair to the Blair of the Oil War, and India is proactive. And now I have to read a letter by Devanuru Mahadeva, the Kannada Dalit writer, who has given up his award in protest against intolerance, in protest against the killing of pluralism, intolerance, democracy, justice and equality, the rape tsunami. And he has written this letter from Kuvempu Nagara, Mysuru, Karnataka. I have always believed that for every government to remain sensitive and society oriented, writers, artists and intellectuals should act like the restraining bridle. However, much against my nature, I have controlled myself from reacting in the present context of returning awards against intolerance. But when some writers and artists organized themselves in support of ruling government, I felt it was a sure sign of evil. Disgusted by this development, I am now returning the Central Sahitya Academy Award and the Padma Shri Award, returning them now. Mahadevan is returning the Sahitya Academy Award as well as the Padma Shri Award. Returning them now, I know it's only symbolic in a way. I feel awkward that I am not able to return the position and prestige I may have obtained indirectly through these awards. It is the answer. It is the answer questioned by the Hegemony Brigade, the Bajrangi Brigade. The dreams nurtured by our freedom struggle, freedom of expression, tolerance and social justice have somehow dwindled after the Nehru era and are now in jeopardy. Mind you, Hegemony could not celebrate the Children's Day, the Nehru Jayanti, and it went a-begging. And Mahadevan wrote, the dreams nurtured by our freedom struggle, freedom of expression, tolerance and social justice have somehow dwindled after the Nehru era and are now in jeopardy. Those values may not be tangible or materially visible, but they are like the very breath of the cultural, social India we need to build. The lack of this awareness appears to be the reason of today's intolerance. I agree. Otherwise, we would not have witnessed the tragedy of the leaders of the central government themselves saying that incidents like that of Dadri and killings caused by ideology differences are the problems of respective states. Similarly, the central law minister, who should at least know that the returning of awards by intellectual is an expression of non-cooperation in protest against social and cultural intolerance, would not have made the self-destructive comment that it is intellectual intolerance against Modi. Instead, he should have accepted it as helpful for the ruling government to become more sensitive to such issues. Similarly, again, the powerful Pejawar pontiff saying in ridicule, would they remain silent if pork were to be cooked in front of a masjid, is also an example of the same state of mind. Who has to say that it is not proper for the mind of the pontiff of the Krishna Mutt to be filled with masjid and pork? Such attitudes among those in power and the vested are knowingly or unknowingly provoking greater intolerance and violence in society. Here it is. The group which is now including in violent exercises of intolerance is emboldened by the feeling that those whom it voted to power are now in the central government, and that whatever misdeed it may commit, it will escape by their blessings. Therefore, the violent incidents of intolerance which used to take place in a clandestine manner are now happening in broad daylight. Never in the past had there been such a situation. Only if the central government introspects on this will it be able to provide governance. In this context, I remember a story I had read somewhere when a powerful man from a community given to dacoity, extortion and violence defeats a weak king and becomes the ruler. The first thing he does is, instead of showing any concession for the dacoity and violence practiced by his community, he suppresses the criminal activities, makes his people civilized citizens, and thus become responsible for creating a healthy society. It appears as though history, having a place of hate challenge before our present Prime Minister, is watching him with a little smile on its face. In sum, this is a time for introspection and soul searching for everyone. The following words of introspection spoken in his last day of power by General Musharraf can be a listen to us. Sayyid Lakhavi were our heroes when they were fighting for the liberation of freedom. When religious fundamentalism began to mix with their struggle, it was transformed into terrorism. Now this terrorism is targeting our own people. I repeat, the following words of introspection spoken in his last days of power by General Musharraf can be a lesson to us. Sayyid Lakhavi were our heroes when they were fighting for the liberation of Kashmir. When religious fundamentalism began to mix with their struggle, it was transformed into terrorism. Now this terrorism is targeting our own people. It is happening in Pakistan. It is the truth of Pakistan. History and Mahadevan wrote, history has often been saying this loud and clear to us. There is also the saying of a yogi, even God cannot save those who perpetrate murder, looting, hatred in the name of religion and God. I am returning the awards to remind ourselves all this in present situation measure, and it is Deva Nura Mahadeva. And now, taking a cue from the massive victory of Grand Alliance against BJP in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav today said such a tie-up was possible in the state where assembly elections are due in 2017. A grand alliance is possible in the state, Mr. Yadav told reporters when asked about possibility of such a coalition materializing in UP to take on BJP in 2017 assembly polls. The Chief Minister, however, did not elaborate. His remarks came a day after an Uttar Pradesh minister suggested a grand alliance involving ruling Samajwadi Party and Mayawati-led BSP for the upcoming assembly polls. On the state similar to the one in Bihar, where rivals RJD chief Lalu Prasad and JDU leader Nitish Kumar came together and decimated BJP. Like Bihar, BJP had swept Uttar Pradesh also in Lok Sabha elections last year, and the party is hoping that it will return to power in the politically crucial state after nearly 15 years. Mayawati can only defeat this. Humanity dragged in Bermuda Triangle war again, India proactive. The Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is loosely defined region in the western part of the North Atlantic Sea where a number of aircraft and ships are said to have disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Meanwhile, invoking the Panchashil principles, Nepalese Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli on Sunday called on India to immediately lift the undeclared blockade imposed on Nepal that would help boost bilateral ties amid the recent political crisis over the country's new constitution. Nepal wants to maintain relations with its neighbors on the basis of principles of Panchashil. Oli said that the Panchashil doctrine is a set of principles to govern relations between states. Their first formal codification in treaty form was an agreement between China and India in 1954. And it is the situation, and I have shared the documentary film on Voltaire. Indian Express reported live. France strikes back at the heart of Islamic State. Massive manhunt underway for suspect who got away. And Countercurrent org published a protesting letter by Santosh-Das. Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar remains a permanent champion for social reform both in India and beyond. In his constitution, he foresightedly incorporated the principles of equality and human dignity by outlawing the perennial of untouchability, which remains a scourge in India and the diaspora, Britain included. In it, he framed a set of fundamental rights of equality, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and personal liberty. His work in the 1950s championing the liberation of women in India will continue to inspire people around the globe for generations. In spite of the principle of Dr. Ambedkar's constitution, crimes against Dalits continue to rise. Furthermore, reported crimes are just the tip of the iceberg. Each day, two Dalit men, women or children are murdered and 5 Dalit women are raped. Toleration, freedom of religion and personal right to choose one's faith, particularly in the context of Dalits, and freedom of speech are being eroded while sadly the government remains silent or mouths platitude in the wake of these Dalits, Ambedkarites and groups that present such communities in the UK have justifiably raised the voice against these atrocities and against your visit. The Dalits in United Kingdom opposed Modi's visit. Prime Minister, you have visited the Ambedkar Museum in London today against a background of rising tensions in India and robust and vocal indignation about your visit here. Many see your visit as appropriating Ambedkar's Ambedkar's name for party political gain. Baba Saheb stands tall above this. I hope your visit to Ambedkar Museum is your commitment to take Baba Saheb stands tall above this. I hope your visit to Ambedkar Museum is your commitment to take a lead in translating his message and his legacy into real action in India and deliver real social change at them. There is no urgent need to reform local, state and national justice system and to make the police force register, process and prosecute crimes against Dalits, as the dismal conviction rates indicates. Justice for Dalits is wanting in a casteist society where more often than not the perpetrators walk free. Where this happens, punish the police for dereliction of duty and pursue corruption. You and your government are under international scrutiny. The initiative of the Federation of Ambedkarite and Buddhist Organization UK to act where the house where Dr. Ambedkar lived from 1921 to 1922 must be a beacon for the world of liberty, equality and fraternity. These are the values Dr. Ambedkar cherished and put into practice. When opened, the museum ought to be symbol of hope for those fighting for justice, equality and social reform worldwide, including those fighting for justice for victims of caste-based discrimination in UK. The legislation agreed by Parliament in 2013 is being robustly resisted by Hindu groups in the UK who argue there is no such thing as caste discrimination. The true reality is when people get off the plane in Manchester, they do not leave their caste prejudice behind in Mumbai. In defining the partnership between India and UK going forward from your speech in Parliament on 12 November, you committed to drawing on the lives of work of Dr. Ambedkar in terms of building a future of social equality, opportunity and dignity for all human and peace among people. This now needs to be backed by concrete action and not just by rhetoric by the government of India. The Ambedkar Museum needs to be developed and managed transparently in order to deliver the purpose it was brought for. This can be achieved only with the involvement of Dalits and Ambedkarites in UK in its making and administration. It is the letter written by Ms. Santosh-Das, MBA, President, Federation of Ambedkarite and Buddhist Organization, UK. Thank you. Cry humanity, cry it is war again, and humanity is dragged into the Bermuda triangle. If you dare not to cry freedom, then I have to invoke the humanity to cry for you. And yes, I support the Grand Alliance and Uttar Pradesh, and I think it is a historical opportunity for Ms. Mayawati to respond the call of Mr. Akhilesh Yadav, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh. Come Mayawati and Chhath Maiya ki Jai. Thank you, India. Thank